그러 가르세가. 어다 칠 쉬는라 진료를 지키죠 되어res.
And so then Geshe just said, in terms of those of us who are gathered here today. Oh, and just a favor, while Geshe is giving the commentary, please mute yourself if you haven't muted yourself, because that will help the audio quality for all the participants. So Geshe just said, in terms of people who are coming today, it is, the request was that everyone has received either a jenang, a permission initiation, or a wang, an empowerment into White Tara. And so then understanding that everyone is approaching this from a practice perspective, he is going to give this commentary on the sadhana of White Tara. Sorry, I keep getting these weird notifications from Zoom. I want to turn those off.
네, 다 나로서 간가로 다 이제 토도가 뭐지 뭐지 토 자가와 숨지지 때마 수지지 때마다 놓치고 말은 동안 이렇게 된다. 자, 안에 제가다 이 신의 뭐지도 치료 뭐지도 저대가 돼서 때한 레벨이더니 단조가와지도 제가와지.
So then in terms of all of us who are here, we also have to reflect upon our good fortune. What is our good fortune? Well, we have been able to achieve that which is difficult to achieve, this precious human rebirth. We have been able to meet that which is difficult to meet. We have been able to meet with the Buddha's teachings, and we have met with that which is exceedingly difficult and rare to meet, which is the Buddha's teachings in the form of a union of both sutra and tantra.
다 뒤는다 기야 수도 손지도 제가 왔다 빼나서 너도 많이 가면 막 때마다 손지를 좋게 도제테스.
And so then Geshe said, of course, generally meeting the Buddha's teachings at all is something that is very rare and precious, but it is said that the teachings on the Vajrayana or secret mantra are rarer to encounter even than the face of a Buddha. So it is rarer to meet the teachings of Vajrayana, even more rare than meeting the Buddha himself.
좀벌린데로 손지 뚜자치 배야 할세기라래. 저는 손지 썰마도 농안이게 때마다 다다든 지워 뭐 말해서 그래.
And so So it is said that amongst the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate aeon, most will be teaching sutra, and out of those 1,000, only 3 will be teaching a union of sutra and tantra.
그래서 어다 대요더니 스탄다 손지 조된데 지르와스 아니 손지 지지 바데 아니 지 배거랬더니 담아 손지 담아데 지 배거래서니 다 농안이게 때마 지고요 봐.
So Geshe was just explaining that out of these 3 Buddhas, excuse me, of this fortunate aeon that will teach Tantra, Buddha Shakyamuni, of course, is one, and then there will be 2 subsequent Buddhas. And one of the subsequent Buddhas who teaches Tantra is said to be the last of the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate aeon.
And so
Geshe said, this is discerned basically based upon the teaching of scripture, and it is not something that is explained in very, very much detail. So how do we know scripturally that the final Buddha of these 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon will be one of the Buddhas who teaches Tantra? We know this because one of his or her vows that this final Buddha made was that they will teach a distillation of all of the teachings presented by the previous Buddhas, and that would include Tantra.
So just this is just to give you an idea of a feeling of your good fortune at being able to encounter these teachings, and also the specialness, the profundity of this time that we have gathered together here today. 다 대응 또 봐셔와라 다 대기바로 왔어 너도 많이 가와이나 또 봐셔와라 어느 정도 제한다고 같이 뭐 시송 거야.
And so then in terms of the causes that bring forth realization,
bring forth realizations of the sutra path or the tantra path, there are said to be 4 which are particularly important. The first one is to have an unmistaken aim or point of practice. In particular, the aim, the point should be steady, and one should be following a methodical, a sensible path in stages to one's goal. And we understand also from that, in terms of the aim and the understanding of the segments of this path, whether one's realization comes out well or not, this depends upon one's own endeavor, right? This is a responsibility that is in your hands. And whether we are aiming for liberation, whether we are aiming for enlightenment or full Buddhahood, whatever system we are using to get there, it's very important to understand the Buddha's intent when he said, I have pointed out the path to liberation that you must cultivate, but I cannot achieve liberation for you. It is our responsibility.
And
so thinking about that, right? Thinking about all those reasonings, then we come to sort of an awareness of how fortunate we are and how precious this time is.
So
because we have all of these powers, because we have all of these potentials within us, right? That's why the Buddha felt confident in saying you must actualize this yourselves. Yeah. So the first is about the steady goal and stages of practice.
And
so then the next ones, the ones that assist that first point, the next one is the accumulation of merit, which is number 2, the purification of negativities, which is number 3, and the 4th is petitioning one's yidam, one's main deity, understanding them as being inseparable from the spiritual teacher.
And
so these are something that we mustn't forget. And in fact, whenever we begin the practice session, it is very useful to just kind of briefly recollect these.
This one,
and so it is said in terms of this presentation that the main source of blessings is the Lama, the spiritual teacher. The main source of attainments is the Yidam, the tutelary deity. And the main source of enlightened activity is the heroes and the heroines, the Dakas and Dakinis.
This one, all that is
So with this kind of discernment, understanding this, then we wish to study and practice well. We will make some requests to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas to be able to achieve this. And so with this motivation, let us do the recitation of the prayers. So we'll start with praise to Shakyamuni Buddha at the very beginning. Perfect. Yep. So we'll now do the mandala offering. We'll just do the short one on page 22. And we'll do the refuge and bodhicitta. Sangye chodon suje chonam lai chonchu bardo dani kyasu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunangye njola benjir sangye ruba shu sangye chodon suje chonam lai chonchu bardo dani kyasu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunangye njola benjir sangye ruba shu. Did we do 3? Geshe and I are both not sure. Yes? Okay, good. good. Yeah. So Geshe said that the next thing that we'll do, and this is just to honor the fact, right, that the preparation for the uncommon path of Tantra is the common path of Sutra. And so just in order to honor that, we will do a recitation of the foundation of all good qualities. And Geshe was saying, you know, different lamas could recommend different things. You could have the foundation of all good qualities, parting from the 4 attachments, 3 aspects of the path, any of these things which kind of, it sort of takes the place of those preliminary teachings on sutra. Kyorwa.
Tomorrow, I think of see about Carolina,
And so actually any sort of text which takes the essence of the common path or the sutra path would be acceptable as a preliminary in this case, but it has to be a text that touches on the three of renunciation or definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness.
Oh, yeah.
So I will just recite it in English, and then we will continue with the teaching. So it's on page 16 in the prayer book. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is difficult to gain and is greatly meaningful, please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly day and night takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful to abandon even the slightest negative action and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the praktimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. Please bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the paths and bhumis, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. All right, so that completes the preliminary prayers.
Yes, one. That's it. Jill see that I'm a boy, and I'm a motamachi.
So Geshe said we're going to be working on a lot of visualizations today. So we're not going to do like a vast visualization as part of the beginning of the session, but we will take a few moments to meditate upon our motivation.
Yeah, so that is it.
So first, just try to put your body and your mind in a relaxed but upright state, and just try to bring a kind of state of focus or calm within your mind.
Good massage, Papa.
So we're going to do a series of 3 exhalations and inhalations. So exhale deeply, and as you exhale deeply, imagine that any discursive thought, stress, negativity that is within you is completely cleared away from your body. Hold that empty breath for a moment and then inhale.
뭔가 이달 새 좀만 중지해서
The level of your heart in your body. Imagine that there is your mind in its aspect of complete purity and luminosity, in the aspect of the sphere of white light.
생제 초마도 들어와서 가리나 것이 그니까 들이자죠.
The pure luminosity of my mind has the power to completely clear away any obscuration and any defilement.
근데 뭐 루자 생제 루자 타디 리파신 루지 대부서 그러기
May myself and all beings, on the basis of being able to realize, to cognize the mind's true nature, able to reach realization.
생제 유주가 지나 들이 생제 루자 자치 보지서 손지휘지 생제 루지 지바이
Based on this understanding, I understand that not just myself, but all sentient beings have this fundamental potential for enlightenment. All sentient beings possess the Buddha nature.
그래서 들이지와 이상도 머리 트그스지 가리지나 자치 조지스 버쳐 숨지는 것 들이자치 뭐지
Understanding this will help me to realize the preciousness of all sentient beings. The preciousness of all sentient beings because on the basis of realizing their inner potential, on the basis of realizing their inner lineage, all sentient beings are potential future Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
대초도 뭐 수수나 자치 뭐 tel다와 이나요 아니 그거들이 자치 뭐지 뭐도 다치 좀에 예자치
Also understanding this, we understand that the potential of all sentient beings is something that is fundamentally positive, that potential for liberation. And for this reason, we can see all sentient beings as being close to us. There's not a single enemy within them. And this goes to the part of the 7-point instruction that all beings are attractive. We can have affection for them. Every being possesses this attractive potential. I want to be able to help them realize their potential and lead them to the state of complete enlightenment. But at the moment, I don't have that capacity. So I must achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings.
이해치를 디지털메이트다. 연애 부수가 지금
In order to be able to do that, may I be able to receive and perfectly practice the instructions of Venerable White Tara. Slow pause there.
이송아
Oh, Jesus.
뭐야 다 되었다니 내가 손지지 공부돼야 다 다리 당마도 내리게 시작하이나 아니 손지리 좀 주간 거기 있어야 돼서 엄마 사버려
Sangye Kawa?
손지 쪼대들이 좀 주간 거기
Wasn't okay. Yeah. So then Geshe said that also because we are looking or investigating the tantric teachings today, when we say we want to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings, we have to say quickly, right? In the tantric aspiration, it's quickly achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all.
다 손지 쪼대들이라 가서 주면서 소소하니 되니까 내가 가서 된자기 메탄주 본다고 있어요.
So we know that Buddha Shakyamuni, for example, he completed the accumulations over like 3 incalculable eons, but we don't want to have to take that long, right? We want to achieve it quickly.
아주 정말 다 돼지 아주 그래 왔어. 와. 이나 다 된 주보 손지 산도 도서는 아끼고 용거래. 아니 내고 용거래서 대선도 해요 말이죠. 그래서 같이 뭐
However, you're not thinking, right? It's important to understand you're not thinking that I want to achieve enlightenment super quickly so that I can be peaceful and so that I can be happy. That should not be the primary motivation.
다 거의 코알라 레벨보다 뭐 나로 대토가 이나요. 아니 나로 니에 자지 뭐 당길라반 이해도 공이 생제돼야지 가디언의 강연연이 대토야 그렇게 된데 문두스.
I want to go quickly as possible because the situation is this, that within samsara, there are all of these beings who, as we mentioned in the meditation, are close to me, possess all of these attractive potentials. Because I don't want to leave them behind suffering in samsara longer than necessary, therefore I must achieve enlightenment quickly.
제도 내서 강가 여고 시나 좀봐도 이제 가르 공부 이나요. 거기 뽑아처럼 넣어야지 니바처럼 넣어야지마도 제일 강에 대도 말해서
And with that type of condition, with that type of aspiration, our practices of love and compassion, they will become stronger and stronger and stronger. And in fact, they won't cause us any mental difficulty or stress. They will only make our aspiration more brave and powerful.
조지대 소설은 니바여봐 자수 지시거든 와 소설은 니바여봐 지시 파수 되지 강가로 니에 자치 뭐 임바지 하고서나 강가를 좋아서 소설 나빠를 요아이 사더니 세주체를 놓아.
So we have to understand this. We have to understand that we have the potential to be able to achieve this attainment. We have to understand that there are all of those beings who, for the reasons mentioned, are immeasurably close to us, and we have the ability to free them. So we must achieve enlightenment quickly to be able to free those beings. So for beginners, right, in the beginning, when we are thinking of compassion, particularly, you have to look at suffering. That might be difficult, but actually, younger.
Geshe Sonam 하고서나 아니 이지거나 아니 니빠처럼 뽑아처럼 그러마도 강에테 더 말해.
But if we understand the reasonings behind this compassionate mind, right? In fact, it will not be discouraging or difficult for us. It will only make our aspiration more courageous and vaster and vaster.
어떤지래 다 대우더니 다 알랭가서 준대 So
Geshe said also because in terms of the practice text, the sadhana or the drupta, it is something that is quite short. So Geshe wanted to explain some other practices connected with it. And then afterwards also he can explain some more enhancing practices, but anyways there's some things that he'd like to start with in the beginning. So the first one is, why isn't it okay just to practice sutra? Why is it necessary eventually to also take up the practice of tantra?
this one, what I'm again chaso, Jalo Rambasha, the chaso Jagan, the native Pajan, Yunjuan, just so
And also because all of the practices, for example, are contained within the Lamrim, the stages of the path for enlightenment, why can't one just follow that exclusively and reach where one needs to go? Why must one also have the presentation of Tantra?
Nanzu Toja Kachimbo, only Nandoical Meja, Chibayara was, the Chikatomba, the Zukatomba, Sentomani was.
The first thing to understand is that the objects of attainment of both Sutra and Tantra are the same. Firstly, the object of attainment through which we achieve our own welfare, which is the Dharmakaya or the truth body. And secondly, the object of attainment through which we achieve others' welfare, which is the Rupakaya, or the form body.
So the tea to the Ares, Hakosarava, Yedezuka Tomba, said that the Yua Shabala, Key, just watching and so, Tantane Pugin, Lechinilla, Korojichi, Sachimoni, Jizo, and Yelevi, Jacoro, talking Jichikuras.
And so then in terms of these two, right, the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya, so this Rupakaya or form body, it is the way which we are able to achieve the welfare to work for the benefit of others. We have to be able to accumulate the particular causes for that Rupakaya or that form body.
This one, oh, that go is no Jipokalina. In
the sutra presentation, this would be accomplished by activating the Mahayana lineage. And that activation of the Mahayana lineage happens when one brings forth that mind of compassion, that realization of great compassion.
Ani sacho longa ani rujim bashaba jesu pashitu yejim bashaba ding boshi noleshaso jiwar.
So in the sutra presentation, right, how does this unfold? One brings forth that Mahayana lineage, generates bodhicitta, practices the 10 bhumis or grounds of the bodhisattvas, traverses the 5 paths of the bodhisattva, then engages in the practices that ripen the continuum of oneself, the 6 paramitas or perfections, and in the practices that help to ripen the continuums of others, the 4 ways of gathering. So that's, from the sutra perspective, that's the only way that you can say you are accumulating the causes for this Rupakaya or this form body. There's nothing in there that you could point to as a main Nirlingigyu, I'm sorry, that's what I missed, a main substantial cause to that. So to give an easy example, it's like if you want to grow some apples, right? You can have a lot of water and fertilizer, which are things that would normally help an apple tree to grow, but without the seed, right? Without that substantial cause, you wouldn't be able to do much.
That is so in a series by series of Tomba Jeba.
So Geshe says this discussion of causality in Buddhism, right? This is something that is really kind of in harmony with the scientific methodology, right? They're also interested in locating the causes and conditions of things. And actually, within this explanation, we find the main reason that we need to practice Tantra.
This one, what I'm going to tell you, to hear
So those practices of the 10 bhumis, the 5 paths and so forth, these are very profound and important, of course, that goes without saying. But we still need to secure that seed, that main cause of the Rupakaya, the form body. That's why we need to look at Tantra. And that's also why we must understand the difference between the presentation of sutra and the presentation of tantra.
어지 대지 나하고 그 같이 뭐래스 다 델리테스 지하고 그거나 요도 아시도 넘바튼 빌롬 아니 너희들 거예요 말에 와 그걸 대고지야 이자 와 열시 그래.
Another reason that it is very, very important for us to practice tantra is because we need a practice which incorporates the 4 purities. If we do not, and the practice of sutra does not contain a path which integrates the practice of these 4 purities.
그래서 어다 요도 아시대 가르래서나 아니 내 요소 다봐 리 요소 다봐 아니 루셰 요소 다봐 아니 제바 요소 다봐.
So what are these 4 purities? The pure abode, the pure body, the pure attainments, zebarwa, and tamazeba. And the last one is the pure activities. So these are the 4 purities.
그래서 어다 내 요소 다봐도 넘바 타마 세리 아니 내 세리 간주 대사되시기
So when we say pure abode, right, we understand that abode is speaking about the place where we dwell, for example, our house, flat, or so forth.
그래서 어다 지적 내 대라 지적도 말롱게 다시 이코스라마도 코로지사네 또 어디가 농시자 그게 공부도 잘라서 봐도 다 들리 찾으면지 아니 루야 말에 네 아고서로 어다 들리지 나도 단단히 너희 깔을 때 비춰 둬야 매이자 네 요새 봐도 뭐 같으면 너희 깔 거예요.
된소 탄다 요레 삼바디로. So when we are practicing tantra, for example, we would visualize the pure abode, in this case of Venerable Tara, which would be the crystal palace filled with all of the beautiful ornaments and all of the other things, and imagine abiding there. So because this practice is not available in sutra, we cannot say that the 4 purities are part of the path of sutra.
This one, oh, that liisana, Tangaros Manoa, so Joche, Ani, Kalekaletani, Toya, Tumbi Mole, Ani, Tas Savesi, Savelatin, Tisidomash, Shane was, Tisidomash, Langaros of the leader, Tisidomili, more Chandoga was, or that digging as a chatsumachi, we can met, Marco Yoa, Leos of Taba, number to be long.
So then the next one is of the 4 purities is the pure body. So when we engage in the practice of Tantra, in this case, White Tara, we imagine that we have completed all of the accumulations. Then from within the sphere of emptiness, we imagine the seed syllable of White Tara. And then from this seed syllable, we ourselves arise as White Tara, having imagined that we have accomplished that state. Because this practice of arising as the deity is not available in the sutra path path does not possess the purity of body in terms of these 4 purities. And that's a really particularly important one, because this rising the body of the deity is actually like the main practice when it comes to the tantric path. So the aspect of the perfectly enlightened Buddha integrating that meditation into the path. Yeah. So in this way, we have practiced arising the abode, a completely purified abode, that aspect of the completely purified abode as the path, and we have also arisen the aspect of the perfectly purified body as the path. And the next one is the enjoyments, or you could say like the material possessions. And so the next one is meditating on the complete achievement of these pure enjoyments, the aspect of those enjoyments being there, which is in the path of Tantra, but not in Sutra.
kepa richi karese soso jitsa domale ya tangi she sa was
Yeah.
chene tuki toyile geze pado meba chini na ani la lamo la soba chewa pike ga tane lamo mo ma denesha diga tane soso le chewa pe ya ire dashi ala dal chewa pe ya indre yel de shel chewa pe ya indre
Niga.
o tende netsete ani o dangwa yo dol ma isa mo she yo sa ta ba no ta ba
Yeah. So then in terms of the pure offerings or enjoyments, how does this work? Well, one arises in the body of the deity. So in this case, white Tara, and then from a thumb at one's heart, one can invite all of the offering goddesses, emanate the offerings, and one imagines that these offerings are made to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and one's spiritual master, as well as, in the case of the self-generation, to oneself in the aspect of Tara. So the first group of scholars says because a sutra does not contain that sort of complete practice, right? It is not in the practice of sutra. It is one of the 4 purities of Tantra.
This one, all that chevila was also took an part of the division cheva chipin and that was shaking as a
So emanating the offering goddesses from the letter Tama at one's heart, imagining them making offerings to all of the holy beings and then absorbing back. This practice is not available in a complete way in a sutra, so it does not possess this purity.
Nipate. 다 단계 나와들에 두개 또이래 예제파도 내가 치위라모 먹었지 된다셔.
야.
대지가 주다 저를 이자라서 다 제도 이게 진이 예시라서 봐. 소설을 치피내라 소설을 비바 옛날에 몇시를 비바 옛날에 피내라 되니 피야 될 피내라 뒤가 사명에 내가 쳐봐지. 무슨 소노도나 아니 된지가 노시. 노시가 내서 때 하는 거리가.
And so the second way, so Geshe mentioned that there were 2 ways that the scholars described how the purity of these objects of offering is understood. So in the second of this, in the second meditation on the enjoyments, it's the same in that from the Tam at one's heart, many offering goddesses are emanated. They make offerings to the holy beings as well as to oneself as the self-generation and then dissolve back. However, it is distinguished because through these offerings, the holy beings experience uncontaminated great bliss. And it is this understanding that through those offerings, they achieve uncontaminated great bliss, which is what distinguishes this as a purity in Tantra that is not available in Sutra.
This one, 단 제방에서 따봐도 너가 탐바. 그래서 눈이 지지 도말이시. 이 특히 저희는 이제 봐도 매바지는 계절에 이게 타라는 짓을 막 봐도 매바트네라. 아니 야선주도 심지 삼바서 제와피. 마세제 같으니 고아드네서 그 동안 요소를 좋아하시. 던지긴 제바데 하고 살아와서 어떤 돌매 말로 요 이산 제방에서 따봐.
And so the final one is, of the 4 purities, the final one is the purity of activities. So one imagines in this case, right, that as Tara from the Tam at one's heart, countless light rays emanate. And in some explanations, there's a small white Tara at the end of each of those light rays. And they accomplish the first activity, which is to make offerings and so forth to the holy beings. And then they accomplish the second activity, which is to free all of the beings who are experiencing the suffering of samsara in general, in the lower realm in particular, and then the light rays dissolve. So this practice, imagining, engaging in these activities is available in Tantra, but not in Sutra. So this is the 4th of the 4 purities.
This one, oh, that 대시대, 너도 제가 쪼대 되래서 하고서 제가 쪼대 대시대래서.
So these 4 purities, Geshe said, this is one of the main factors that distinguishes the uncommon practice of Tantra from the Sutra practices, the practices of the common path.
This one, oh, that they are walking. Judicial, was Najolam Judicial,
And the other thing that Geshe just wanted to share really briefly is in terms of these practices of the 4 purities, these are an essential component of any of the classes of Tantra. So whether Kriya Tantra, or action tantra, which we're studying today, whether a performance tantra or charya tantra, whether yoga tantra or whether highest yoga tantra, these 4 practices are integrated into all of those. Oh, yeah. And there's another way also to explain the difference of sutra and tantra, which is how we are using the inner afflictions. So the analogy is like some kind of insect, which is in the heartwood of the tree. And the insect is slowly able to chew its way out and liberate itself. So in the same way, we use our inner afflictions of attachment in order to be able to break through them by transforming them and then achieve liberation.
Ko dewo ale miki moshi ge betri tisem dus ani ko dewo ji nyani shi ba she ba ina pena shaji de ko ni pa chushu de es nyola chek shaji ji bo nyola chek ina.
Yeah. And so Geshe said that that there's lots of details to go into here, but he doesn't want to take up too much of the time. Nupa chunchu re tene. So just to illustrate in terms of Kriya Tantra or Action Tantra, this first class of Tantra, it is said to be sort of, its power is the less of the 4. Yeah. Okay. So in terms of this aspect of transforming the attachment, how you do this in Kriya Tantra or Action Tantra would be like if you imagine a couple, for example, a young man and a young woman, and they like each other very much, and looking at each other gives a rising to a feeling of bliss and happiness, but they don't dare even to laugh or smile at each other. This is like the practice of the Kriya Tantra or Action Tantra.
Oh, that
yeah, and then of course we engage in more active forms of transformation, and we go through the higher and higher classes of practice of Tantra.
Yeah, I don't know yeah, lama so subiya ina kitchen de bondu was. The what chibo ina.
La?
The one you chibo ina.
Yeah.
You move the court that one in la court. Shem days and chipa chimbo is a copa taught remote Daniela. You let you in the Damato. Kikang chimote.
So in terms of also the differences perhaps with the practice of Sutra and Tantra here, when it comes to attachment, we know that, for example, in the hearer's path, so with the practice of the Vinaya, right, the monastic discipline, it is advised to see the afflictions such as attachment as being like the enemy, and to withdraw and stay as far away from the object of attachment as possible.
Yeah.
And this comes from the understanding, right, that one's enemy, so this enemy of the affliction of attachment, is more powerful than oneself. So it's better to stay well away. The Bodhisattva practitioner, he or she has developed to a bit of a higher level, right? They have a greater capacity, so they're able to kind of confront and meet and confront the affliction directly. Yeah. Who's going to win and who's going to lose, that remains to be determined, right? Yeah. Yeah. And it is said that Tantra is like you grab the affliction by the collar, by the scruff of the neck, and then you give them a spanking. It's a little bit like that, right? So you're interacting with the affliction very directly. Yeah. And once again, in the case of Kriya Tantra, gonda chagyudi. And the level of attachment you're working with is a difference too. So in the Kriya Tantra, it's that attachment when you look at your object of desire that you're transforming. Yeah, so Geshe said we can come more to more detail on that later, but perhaps let's continue for now.
This one, what that the 너 깔리는 여자도 싫으니 부자做了 was. 뭐 깔리는 부자做 가르 과야做 갖고做 가르스.
And so the next thing that we need to do to understand Tantra is what is the main object of abandonment for the Tantric practitioner? We know what the main objects of abandonment are for the Sutra practitioner, right? They're the obscurations of the afflictions and the knowledge obscurations. So the two obscurations. But what are they for the Tantric practitioner?
타마비 노아도 타마비 셴바 어데니들 이니비 자고 가레스.
It's ordinary appearance and ordinary clinging. Ordinary appearance and ordinary clinging are the two things that must be abandoned, the objects of abandonment for the Tantric practitioner.
아그서를 어타 타마비 노아세나 가르소 군바이 내려 가르소 소소이 내려 온나 타마바이 내지나 타마비 노아샤가 있다 가르소 강간이라고 제가네서 지금.
So Geshe said, in terms of the ordinary appearance, this is a little bit easy, right? Like grasping at ourself as ordinary, our ordinary concept of ourself, our house, and so forth. These have this appearance. So just kind of accepting and grasping at those ordinary appearances.
타 냠바레스 타 대파고 아니는 강가 다지가 노아 하고서와 소소 야지저 도마에는 지저 도메게 내 노아샤야 지금 내가 지금 요 이제 던지가 노아 생기네 수소나 던지 그 야노 템보 수소나 아니 누가 되면 내가 강가
So what we have to do is, in the case of the practice of White Tara, we imagine that we ourselves are in the aspect of the deity and that our environment is the pure abode, the celestial crystal palace of White Tara and all of the enjoyments within it. This is a very skillful practice because if we are able to maintain this appearance of Tara and her Pure Land, then it is said eventually we will be able to eliminate the cause dunya meposo tugiribe.
야 강에 되겠냐 도야 노아샤소는 다
Yeah, the appearances that give rise to our suffering will no longer be there, right? There will only be these pure appearances. So it's a great way to clear away our suffering.
대송아 어다 타마비 노아 되라 아니 리니어레스 하고서 타마비 노아 기보지도 로지지트비 타마비 노아세는 때에서 처음부터 님다.
And so Geshe also said, in terms of the ordinary appearance, you can understand it in two ways. So the first is just grasping at the place and oneself as being ordinary. That's the first type of ordinary appearance. And the second one is this ordinary appearance of things being inherently or truly existent. Yeah, so one of those is what we would call a mistaken consciousness, but not both of them. But from the perspective of Tantra, these are both mistaken consciousnesses, right? Both a mistaken consciousness, grasping at the environment as being your ordinary house rather than a celestial abode, as well as this inherent existence. Another thing that Geshe wanted to share is when you are receiving instructions, right? When we're discussing Tantra, like now, it's absolutely fine to have some doubts and wonder about some of these methods. But in the practice of Tantra, when you're actually sitting down and doing the sadhana, right? When you're actually in the meditation session, it's very important to clear away the doubts from the mind, because in Tantra, those doubts are obstacles to the attainments you're trying to accomplish. So you need to have stable faith and confidence in the practice of Tantra. Otherwise, there will be like a torrent of doubts, and these will block your progress. And if it's because of that lack of faith, for those of you who know the story of Atisha, he said you need faith, and you cannot accomplish one deity, much less 100 deities. So while we're discussing, you definitely want to be thinking about these things. It's normal for doubts to arrive. We want to discuss those, but in your actual meditation session, we want to try to clear away those doubts. And because it's not easy to do that, and because it's not easy to maintain that stable faith, and confidence. This is one of the reasons that the practices of Tantra are secret, hence secret mantra.
다 타마비 셴바 위치 바레스. 타마비 셴바세나 당연 노아로 잔노아 리니니 와스. 다 셴바라 리니 와레스.
And so the next one is ordinary clinging or ordinary grasping. So just like with the ordinary appearance, there were two types. With this one, the ordinary clinging, there are also two types.
당가 타마바 이 som바 대치보용 때네 셴바지레 대 셴바 라바드레스.
So that grasping or clinging at oneself as an ordinary being, grasping at this concept, I really am ordinary. This is the first.
로 루시도 말했더니 와가 멸레셰베가 데코야레스.
It's not a mistaken consciousness, strictly speaking. It is not. However, it is a hindrance in the practice of Tantra. So in our Tantric sessions, we must abandon it.
다 로지지 트빙 당가 타마바 이 상관적으로 우트리스는 바지야 요초레.
And the second one is the grasping or clinging at oneself as inherent or truly existent, the lokshire. And that is a mistaken consciousness, so you should abandon that in Tantra and in Sutra. So when, especially when one is practicing Tantra, particularly when one is engaging in the self generation or the front generation, one must abandon these. So then Geshe said, what are we trying to achieve? We said what the objects of abandonment were. What are the objects of attainment? Well, in this particular instance, we are trying to achieve the holy body, holy speech, and holy mind of White Tara wish-fulfilling wheel. Yeah, and so what is the cause for being able to achieve the holy body of White Tara? It is the practice of the six deities, the Kriya Tantra practice of the six deities. So Geshe said that, probably many of you know these, but there may be some people who are beginners with Tantra, so he just wants to at least list what these six deities are. They aren't deities as we normally think about, so first to clarify that, and I will just read them for you. I might go through the list twice, just so people who want to write them down can write them down. Sorry. The emptiness deity, the deity of the syllables or letters, the sound deity, the form deity, the mudra deity, the deity of science. Emptiness, syllables, sound, form, mudra, science, for a total of 6. Whatever Kriya Tantra deity, whatever Action Tantra deity you are practicing, these 6 are extremely important because they are what will allow you to practice the arising as the deity effectively. The most important of these 6 is the emptiness deity, the deity of emptiness. It is said that if this one is in place correctly, then all of the others will unfold more easily. Geshe Sonam? Oh, Geshe. Oh, yeah. Why is that? Because it's on the basis of understanding this emptiness that we can shift the basis of designation of the self, right? Without emptiness, you wouldn't be able to dissolve and shift that basis of designation as the self or the I from that ordinary appearance to one's self as the deity.
Yeah, she was almost assuming was. Oh, I can't just do much. Each one is
So Geshe said the holy beings often mention this, like, how can I possibly arise myself as a Tara, right? Like, I am me, right? Well, the emptiness is the key here, right? You dissolve that ordinary basis of designation into emptiness, and then you designate oneself as the deity.
다시 제가 가르쳐 버렸어요. 나로서 탐합이 다시 파도 소지는 봐줘. 하고 살아. 얘네 지스 도미가 사면서 사면 이시 진짜 쓰다니라. 다시 저 뒤나샤.
So we dissolve this basis of self-designation, the basis of the designation of the ordinary self or I, into emptiness, and then we imagine that from within that sphere of emptiness, from that state of profound wisdom, that basis of designation shifts and one arises as Tara.
So that's
a very important thing to understand within these six, and then the other important thing out of these six is the form deity, right? Because that is actually when oneself is arising, in this case, as white Tara. And so then Geshe is saying sum. Okay, sorry. And then the next one Geshe is talking about. Okay, so we close. I just so everyone can keep track here, we have to achieve the body, holy speech, holy mind. So we're now closing the discussion on the holy body, and we are moving to the discussion of achieving the holy speech of White Tara. And Geshe was just saying that the holy speech of White Tara is achieved, or any Kriya deity is achieved on the basis of these two: concentration with repetition or recitation, whichever word you prefer. That's the first one, with repetition or recitation. And the second one, concentration not relying on repetition or recitation. So Geshe said, there's the repetition or the recitation of the mantra that you normally do. The second one, concentration not relying on recitation, is when you are not when you're not speaking the mantra, but you imagine that you are reciting the mantra on the mental level.
This one,
and so Geshe said with the verbal recitation, so with the concentration with repetition or recitation inside number one, there's two types. So there's the one where you are muttering or whispering softly the syllables, and the other one where you are imagining the sound of the syllables mentally.
And so
Geshe said that second practice is because if you're in a group practice situation and you like to recite things really loudly, that's not so great for the other people that are around you and trying to concentrate, right? So that's why you can imagine the sounds mentally. Yeah. So there's a story that they like to tell in the monastery. So it is said that there were two monks that were sitting during the. Okay, sorry, we don't know if it was in a monastery. Could have been somewhere else. Anyways, there was two practitioners gathered, and they were gathered for group prayers. And it was the time to recite the Heart Sutra. And so one of them liked to do the Heart Sutra in like this big booming voice. And he was saying, no body, no tongue, no mind, and so forth. And then the person beside him said, why don't you just say no head, and then you would be quiet? So that's how the story goes. So when you're in a group practice situation and you're reciting a mantra, Geshe said, it's really nice to be courteous, and you can whisper it to the level that you can hear, right? But not to the level that you're disturbing other people.
data 타바티도 소테 소테 설라테네 튜드라레스.
And so Geshe is just saying that in terms of achieving the holy mind, it is through the practices of the 3 samadhis or 3 concentrations.
data 타바티도 소테 달 마레 다네체 소테 마체케니라 델라메네 띵에서 더니라 어느 튜드야지.
So the first is the concentration upon the mantra itself, nampadi, on the visualization of the mantra itself. And you can imagine it rotating, so one can achieve concentration or samadhi based upon that.
Yeah. 아니 뭐 다녀와서 매 체면하고 봐. 이거 소노도네 오마사니.
The next one is the concentration abiding in fire, in which one imagines that that there are kind of flames that are emanating from the mantra that one has visualized, and one develops concentration based upon that.
다 타마텔 다 마체도 가리나요. 중도 마체도 강가로 로지 매버서는 돈이라. 다 타마텔에 타바르가 티야디.
And the last one is concentration, imagining the voidness of the mantra itself and the one who is reciting the mantra. And Geshe said that this is the final one that actually leads to liberation. So Geshe said that if you understand these key points, then you actually understand how to do the practice text, how to do the sadhana. But we will still go through the short sadhana at least briefly. La. Yeah. So Geshe said, in terms of the sadhana, it's not many words, so we will start going through it now. So Geshe said it's actually quite a short sadhana, shorter than his taste would like, but convenient for folks, I hope. And so Geshe said that actually, like, if you use this as kind of like the shell of the practice, and then you add things, bumpa drubya dang. If you add practices like blessing the vase, visualizing and blessing the offerings, contemplating the different types of offerings, if you integrate that, this will make the practice richer. And actually, if you have them, it is nice to be able to use the vajra and the bell for this practice. Yeah, and so Geshe said we talk about method and wisdom. And so when we put our vajra and bell down, we pick them up in the opposite direction. So we imagine that method is grabbing the vajra on the wisdom side, and that wisdom is grabbing the bell on the method side. And this represents the inseparability of method and wisdom. And said Geshe said the actual ideal practice is that you don't even pick them up separately, that you can use the same hand to pick up both the vajra and the bell in that order we mentioned, and this also represents the inseparability. And in that case, if you're using the one hand, what you would do is you would pick up the dorje, the vajra first, and then pick up the bell next, and this is the inseparability. Because we understand, right, that we are engaging in the practice of method and wisdom inseparably. And then what you can do is you take your left hand, take the dorje out and hold the take the yeah. So then you take the dorje out of the hand that's holding the bell and you hold them like this.
This one?
Yeah.
This one. This one.
So if we begin the discussion of the sadhana,
So
Geshe said the first one is the recitation of the Sangye Chut Sokma, the refuge and bodhicitta prayer.
소리 치서만 되게 샤노도 세세니 되는 거야. 당연히 지는 된도로 체면에서도 되는 거야. 대수고도 요 말에 되거든요.
So Geshe said this is the practice of refuge and bodhicitta, of course, needed at the beginning of the practice, but what was left out here, which one should integrate if one has time, is the practice of the four immeasurables.
다 되게 다 그런 지야래라 쪼쪼 세도 주마야 보고 지거야. 이사 다 이제 주 벌써 주바 그거야. 이제 디테지거야.
And so then Geshe said also, because we need to prepare our mind for the practice, the recitation of this helps us accumulate the two accumulations.
어디에서 와? 다 소바와신도 사와다마다 내는 좀 알만 보고 있디야가 그래서 간지 디세면도
So Geshe said we will jump now to the actual practice because we don't have time. So we go to the line that starts Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma.
소바와신도 사와다마 소바와신도 항 세리다
So we can understand as designating, as indicating the self, which is the union of body, speech, and mind, designated on the basis of body, speech, and mind.
소바와 세리 롱자 나이 롱자 이마 이서 롱자.
The next one, Svabhava, this indicates the nature of ourselves, body, speech, mind.
Shuddha 세리 다바 로지지 다바 데마메바
Shuddha means it is pure. It is pure because it is not truly existent. So here Geshe said this part of the mantra is indicating that the self that we designate on the basis of the coming together of body, speech, and mind does not exist inherently. Does not exist from its own side. Sarva Dharma means all dharmas or all phenomena. Svabhava, again, talking about the nature. Shuddhasana? Shuddha is talking about pure, in other words, pure of inherent existence. So hum is indicating then one spontaneously arises. Kechik madroma yongyadi. Kechiki lacheyadi. Ale.
야 너지 지에도 가와이나 칸데는 요하러 깨지 중시에 있어.
Yeah, 뭐
다 알게 깨자면 된다. 홍세한테 단다가서 봐 오무서바와신다 사와다마 서바와신다. 홍세한테가 아니 지지 도미가 투지가 아니 동반이 해비거든요. 세미대 아이고 나자지 저기.
So here we are imagining with the recitation of Om Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddha Hang that sphere of emptiness from which white Tara will arise, that is our self. So here they're saying that's what I am. That's what that's indicating, right? So you're imagining that.
This one, 동반이 저 세레다 타마비 노아의 용서 줘봐대. 당기 소소야로 와서 어때 강가라로 동송을다. 답가리 여기로 왔어.
And so then Tompani du gyur, which here is not translated for some reason, this means that all becomes emptiness. So we imagine that all dissolves into emptiness.
This one, 다 되게 담아비 당길라바 노아의 셴바데 파 가제데 파 인도 아니 드바도 데데케 강에도 데데케 나로소데 파 동선을 봐주는 거.
So when we meditate upon this sphere of emptiness, we can imagine all of the things that we need to get rid of absorbing into it. So we can imagine ordinary appearance and ordinary appearance dissolving into the sphere of emptiness, as well as all of the obscurations.
This one,
and so then now we begin the practice of the self-generation. So from within emptiness, so out of this sublime realm, they've translated it here, it's actually out of emptiness, then we arise. So now we have to visualize at about the heart level, a beautiful white lotus, pema karpo, right?
This one, or that did in the Daichiko.
And upon that, a beautiful moon cushion or disc.
This one, or that did in the room say in Bala, Hakasara, Rose Tangisam, or to Manisono to say the Yambala,
and upon that, a white tam arises, and this white tam is representing one's own mind, specifically one's own mind that has been contemplating emptiness.
This one, or that tender what the career series, that is dramatic Savetes.
And what is that tam, which is the aspect of the mind? This is the seed we talked about. This is going to be the seed of white tara.
This one, or a balatonji chamber. This one, they use a jabale, Taruni Lasha, it's a drama.
So then, having accomplished the two purposes, which was explained before, the light dissolves and we arise as wish-fulfilling wheel white tara.
Shalachi, Shani, and she had to buy the Sumson, those sort of them. So she dear, the Jill.
So Geshe said, you imagine that she has beautiful face, one face, two hands, and Geshe said in the beginning, 3 eyes. You think about the 3 eyes that are on the face, and the rest of the eyes will come later.
But perhaps it's
easier, you can think also about all of the 7 eyes together.
This one, short choose your shaja. Honest,
so Geshe said that she has 2 hands, and the younger son. Sorry. And the right hand is in the mudra or the generosity of giving the dharma. Giving the attainments of dharma, the attainments of Buddhahood, liberation, and so forth.
And
the left hand is holding the stem of Anupala flower, and it represents giving protection. And Geshe said these details of the visualization, they're not just details, right? They're points that are really important for our meditation. And why is it important? Because we need to be able to generate the divine pride of really being the deity, and we also need the union of sub-senirwa. Yeah.
Sano.
And we need to have the divine pride of the deity and also the clear appearance of the deity. These 2 things are very important. Yeah, so Geshe said that in terms of this left hand, which is holding the stem of the Upala flower, it blooms above, and then coming out of it are like 3 other flowers.
That is good.
Upon that are 3 flowers. Oh, so the one representing mind is open. La? And it represents the Buddhas of the present time who are working currently to be able to achieve the benefit, the welfare of sentient beings. Yeah, so then this flower is half closed, like a half open fruit, and and this represents the Buddhas of the past.
책이와레스.
And the second one is just the bud of the lotus flower, a bud that is not opened at all. And that represents the future Buddhas, the Buddhas who are yet to come into the world.
오다 디시디가 메나 로마스 과서도와스 지마지 야엔니르레 디가 디스가 순지체 자 가르수기 알잖아. 안디는 디가 와.
Yeah.
디스가 순지체 세리라. 디스가 순지 간디시나요. 이제 로메거더니 틀라라 되는 거래. 사다고.
So Geshe said we mentioned these three flowers, right? The open one in the middle and the half-closed one and the closed one. And we said that these represent the Buddhas of the three times, the Buddhas of the present who are working for beings, the Buddhas yet to come, and the Buddhas of the past. This represents that all of them, all of them arise through the all of them arise through the compassion of white Tara.
오다 시에 등가와 순들시 다시 디와스 노 가버와. 시에 등가와 진 디와스 베자 거는가. 셈비 노조 다이 말말. 예비 노시 예비 아빠라 노시 시에 등가와스.
시에 등가와스는 등엘레 교바로.
시에 등가와스 미 디오바.
Oh, yeah. And so then there are 7 eyes, chin, dun.
시에 디와스 시에 디디다 얼서와. 얼서지 라바니 니체 아니 구마니 니와레스.
So in terms of the location of these 7 eyes, there are the 3 eyes on the head, so one in the center and like the 2 eyes like we have. Then there's an eye on each hand and an eye on each foot.
단대로 오케바 소소네 데시자도 니디와스. 꾸비샤니 그 시에니 디가 아니 야와도 이도아니르마.
And Geshe said different lamas explain the meaning of these eyes differently. One explanation is that the eyes on the 2 feet represent that she is looking out and helping the beings of the 2 lower realms of the hell realms and the hungry ghosts. So she is working in order to help them to be able to remove their difficulties. And the next one is the eye looking at the human beings and the animals. So white Tara is looking to free from suffering the animals and the human beings. And the 2 eyes on the head, she is looking to free from suffering the devas, so the god beings, and the asuras, the demigod beings. And the eye in the middle of the head is the wisdom eye that is able to perceive all. Chinsum. Golatsum. Golasum. Oh, right.
Tisum.
Tisum. Namka gosum.
Tisum. Nota goshi.
Goshi.
Tisum. Nota goshi don tis japi dirwas.
Okay. Namtar goshi hagosum. Adusum. Ale. So, and this explanation is that the 4 ale. Then namtar goshi sena lakpani dankamba. Yeah. The eyes on the 2 hands and the 2 feet. These represent the 4 doors to liberation, and then the 3 on the head represent gosum dinso. They represent that she is able to completely see perfectly the 3 times of the present, the past, and the future. Gyud Jebumepa? Yeah. Yeah. And so Geshe said, when we talk about the 4 doors of liberation, we usually talk about the 3 doors of liberation, right? About the cause not being truly existent, the effect not being truly existent, and the nature or the essence not being truly existent. And the next one is Ngumpa Dua Chewa Mepa. So the meaning of this one, the 4th one, which is added in this case, is whether it is the object of abandonment or whether it is the object of attainment, it is not truly existent.
야 던지기네서 저다와지 쳔비요 다치레스다
And so this is Jiden Sorwa.
디디요와
And so this is the explanation of the meaning of the eyes of the 3 times and the 4 doors of liberation.
다 디디와지 다 디게 다야 하시니라 샤니 드니 다 코로포게스게 다야 뭐뭐지 누와스데 야바고 가레스.
And so Geshe said that in terms of the meditation here, it's really important to understand at least the main features of the form, the body of the deity.
다 서울 뭐죠 수고들라 라마세이나 지바레 디가 어느 로니 지스 도마시아와 디가 어느 라이 나자때 뭐시나 어느 타마비 셴바도 과그
And Dzong Rinpoche and many other great lamas of the past, they have said very clearly that if one wants to be able to bring forth divine pride of the deity, divine pride, which is necessary for success in our practice, tamape jembadirwa, we have to get rid of that ordinary grasping or clinging.
다 샤샤르지 시에니 드니 샤에 조지 샤자 요 발라에 와사 디네즈 차소 시탄네 사보 차소나 타마비 노아데 가르가르케.
And then on the basis of understanding very clearly the form of the deity, for example, what is the right hand doing? What is the left hand doing? Looking at the eyes and all of the forms and so forth. Understanding that will help us bring forth clear appearance, which is very important also.
다 드리고 라이 노아데 우리지메 가제트더 시타 토소나 거기 자와고 님뭐 조 다리 셴바
And if we understand that the body of the deity is not inherently existent, that it does not exist from its own side, this practice will help us to address the very root of samsara, the self-grasping ignorance. And another thing, the factor of divine pride, as stable as the divine pride, thinking I am the deity is, this will help us to bring forth stable samadhi or concentration and even calm abiding. Yeah. And then also, selton, right? And on the basis of this clear appearance, one will also be able to practice vipassana effectively. So it is said that on the basis of the clear appearance of the deity, on the basis, on the basis of divine pride, one can engage effectively in the practice of placement meditation, and on the basis of developing clear appearance, one can use analytical meditation. And the other thing, a unique feature of Tantra here, which we don't find in Sutra, is that through this practice of deity yoga, we can actually practice a union of calm abiding and special insight. Supula kusu So Dzong Rinpoche advises a method of first arising as the deity, and then to practice analytical meditation, we can go through the forms of the deity, observing all of the features of the holy body, and we can start from the top, moving downwards, and then we can go from the bottom part to the top. So these are the main practices, Geshe said, of the sadhana. These are the main practices of the sadhana, and then there are many other branches which are like the auxiliary practices. And so Geshe said that the next part is to visualize the 3 syllables upon the holy body. So then we have a white om, a red ha, tam di kohunga dunla yori di tempo. Yeah, so we visualize the Om, Ah, and Hum representing the holy body, holy speech, and holy mind of the Buddhas. And this is in terms of our practice of the 6 deities. This is the deity of signs, visualizing this Om, Ah, Hum. On this basis, one can do the visualization of receiving the blessings of the holy body, holy speech, and holy mind of all of the Buddhas. And on the basis of enhancing the blessings of body, speech, and mind, then one's meditation becomes very stable. Yeah. So sorry, one thing that we have to mention here with the Om, the Ah, and the Hum. In the Hum which is at the heart, there is a tam behind it. So you can imagine like there's a Hum with a tam just in front. Then the tam이 가르쳐기요. So then we imagine that from the tam at Venerable Tara's heart, immeasurable lights and light rays emanate, and that these invite all of the wisdom beings, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so we can imagine all of these holy beings in the aspect of white Tara. And Geshe said, as they are descending and becoming inseparable with you, often here, you don't see it here in the sadhana, but often you would recite Za, Hum, Bam, Ho. So Za is when those visualized in front come to the crown of your head. Hum means they enter into your body. Bam means they dissolve or become inseparably mixed with you, just like a water and milk mixed together. So those wisdom beings, they can also mix inseparably with you like water and milk, because you are in the aspect of white Tara, remember? Ho just seals that inseparability of the wisdom being in the self-generation. And at that point, you are arisen as white Tara, which you were before, but now you are empowered with all of those blessings and all of the stability. And then we imagine that these these lights come out from the tam again, and they invite all of the initiating deities. And we imagine that to these initiating, these abhisheka or empowerment deities, we request, please grant me the initiation. So Geshe said there's different things you can imagine. Some of them are holding the empowerment vase, and some of them are holding other things to give the empowerment, but that might make it too complicated. And then when the actual vase empowerment and the consecration are being granted, you can recite, I don't know if it's here in the sadhana, Om Sarva Tathagata Abhishekata Samaya Shriye Hum. And then you imagine that the initiating water kind of fills and overflows at the top of your crown. This translates into the Buddha of infinite life, they say here, which is actually Amitayus. So Amitayus, the Buddha of long life, becomes your crown ornament. So
근데 가르가 이나이때 강가로로 직군이라 소설 마태야 돼. til 때레스.
And said, then Geshe said that you can imagine that then from the tam at your heart, again, as Tara light rays emanate out and they hook back the blessings of body, speech, and mind, but specifically also the blessings of any life force that has degenerated, that has been lost, or that has been stolen. And you imagine these dissolving back into yourself.
다 소속의 체 바지 체 녀마도 다 스제 사이고 지고 다 니반 녀발로 소바 가르 요바 이나이 니바르 주아스 디디자 된 주아 소소 우나고 소모토 그라레.
So you can imagine, and Geshe said it's very brief here, but you can imagine that anything that has degenerated one's lifespan, anything that has caused illness and imbalance of the elements and so forth, that all of the essence of these elements, these essence of the life force and so forth have been reclaimed.
체지 다다 니가 또 봐죠. 체지 다다 소소 자와데 문제 되는데.
Being sorry.
다 디소스 다 되는 거 아산을 단계 되시다.
Yeah, and so Geshe said, and now there would normally come the time where we recite the mantra. Because we've already achieved the divine pride and the pure appearance. So now comes time to focus on the mantra recitation. And Geshe said he wants to also clarify something that's really important to you. There's a really mistaken idea when you're doing retreat, what we're doing retreat is. Doing retreat is actually meditating on the divine pride and the clear appearance. That's the most important thing. Doing retreat is not mostly reciting mantras. So let's be clear. But Geshe says, you know, that was the intention behind like the whole idea of retreat. It used to be this idea of meditation on the important points, but somehow over time, this kind of changed somewhat to like, I have to recite a lot of mantras. So actually the mantra recitation was really when one had tired of the meditation, right? When one became kind of sort of worn out and weary of the meditation and the visualization, then in the break from that visualization and meditation, one would then recite mantras. This is how it was originally formulated. And you know for yourself, what, right? Whether you are doing your best to try to incorporate the practice of visualization, awareness of oneself as the deity and so forth with the mantra recitation or not. Yeah. 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 So then Geshe is just explaining the mantra. Om Tare, Tare Tambodinga is freedom from samsara. Tutare is freedom from the 8 fears, the 4 inner fears, and the 4 outer fears. Turedi? Yeah. And Ture is a freedom from all of the illnesses. Yeah. Freedom from all illnesses. And we also have to have confidence that reciting this mantra is effective because Tara, she wants to help all beings, even beings that she doesn't know, perhaps. So there is a story about a girl who had gone into the forest to collect flowers, and she somehow lost her way, and she encountered a wild elephant. And so at that time, the elephant actually took her in its trunk and it sort of started to carry her off. And so, of course, she was very scared. Now, she hadn't done any particular practice or study, but she said, you know, those Buddhist followers, they are always talking about Tara. So perhaps I should ask Tara for help. And then after she made that request, a bird started to circle around the elephant 3 times.
하고서라와서 아니 고조치를 롱바치티가 그 파악하는 내가 마시는 데스 토워진 거를 좋아하는 그러고 롱바치 그러고 좋아하는 거 숨차스 그런
이디야 보고서.
세는 사자 토워진 거를 좋아하니라
Yeah.
롱바치 좋아하는 거 좋아차 차원을 그걸 테마 숨지스
Ale, sorry, ko lampo-chengi, ko pumodi shingtong nangla sashi
마시주세는 사자 토워지를 좋아하니라
Yeah.
하고서 좋아하는 거 숨차니
sula.
또 부모들
Ale. And so then the elephant, he actually left the girl who he had taken in his trunk in some sort of high place, maybe a tree or something, and then he offered 3 prostrations. The elephant prostrated 3 times.
요즘부터는 코로나자가 큰 돈이 살에 미워서 몇 중반으로 막 큰 돈이라 뭐 강리워서 코로 보이고 사자질 좋아하는 걸로 좋아하고 선산 아니 코로 반도서.
And it is said that the elephant, he also freed all of the other human beings. He had carried off many human beings and then offered prostrations to them in apology and then went off.
다 된다고 다 로지 뭐 셰드야 셰드 와서
So Geshe said there's many sort of stories about the miraculous power of Tara's blessings.
다 된다 같이 뭐 하고서 와서 뭐도 고발을 줘. 이바데 시지바제 아니 또 뭐제도 되게 지바. 뭐긴 지바제 나자도 봐도 다 되지 군도긴 지바.
Yeah. So Geshe said that we understand though that the sort of the powers of a Tara in terms of the mantra. We understand that the Tara is talking about freeing from samsara, and then Tutare is talking about freeing from the 8 fears. And Geshe said there's a really nice explanation about the 4 inner fears and the 4 outer fears, but there's not time to go into that now.
다 마마 예쁘는 자는 벌써 좀 그러게 소가 마마선 체를 좋아?
Let's say.
체지
Yeah.
아니 아예세나 세노
Yeah.
세노
Yeah.
야나 세리더니 이시 제도 세노 이시라 소바 다 배워지지스
Yeah. Ane punyesana sorry gewa sonam.
아니 번에세네 나마 아이 좋아
Yeah.
나마 아이 번에 세리 이시
Yeshe. Oh. Janasana?
야나 세리 이시로
Yeah.
마마 아이 좋아
Yeah.
번에 자나 이시
Yeah.
벌써 좀 그래 소가 배워 잡아도 땜바시야
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Younger Jota Mamadi.
아마 체
Uh-huh.
무슨 말
Ayur.
아이 번에 논도이나 아이 세노
Yeah.
번에 자나 이시 야나
Yeah.
이시로
Yeah.
벌써 좀 세가 배워
Yeah.
그리서 선다야 땜보시야 이 사람
So mama, when we recite the white Tara mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Arya Punya Jana Pushtin Kuriye Soha, mama is indicating life force, increase of life force. Arya is indicating increase of sunam or merits. Punya Jana is indicating the increase of wisdom. And Pushtim Kuriye Soha represents all of those becoming stabilized.
And so
if we can recite the mantra with an awareness of this, that's important, that's helpful for us. And Geshe said if you tire of the longer mantra also, excuse me, it's perfectly acceptable to just recite the mantra Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. That's perfectly fine. Yep.
또 이때는 거들라 딜레지어로 고고지어로 와 되게 할 레벨이 자체뭐 디사바바 템보 포스서 봐야 보지 또 뒤노는 전에 저절 소소된 뒤노는 되네라 하고서 와서 소소 뒤노 여봐서는 또는 다시 야 바지 가가 아빠메 와서야 소소 년자 비비가 가리나 이어지 뒤노 쓰이다 아니라 아니 바지 면 와서야 제도 세니가 배야 소노 돈 사야 들리면서 야스
So then in terms of So in the first part of the recitation, so normally we visualize the thumb and the mantra garland at the heart. So Geshe was explaining when we visualize, when we're reciting the mantra Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha and so forth, just this, I'm sorry, you probably can't see this clearly, but the thumb letter is actually on the sheet that we distributed to everyone, so everyone has it. At that thumb letter at the top, there's like a tigli, that squiggly line out here. And Geshe said you can imagine it having a very, very bright and radiant light. And nanglolang also said that.
다 때가 내 주주를 맞아 전부 지게 넘바 할레베트는 비도하고 때뭐 스지 진내바 심마도 봐. 다 소소시다가 이날에 소소글라마 이날에 소소가 다니에 가리나 가르소노 또는
And it becomes very vast and bright, this tigle or the squiggly line. It becomes very vast and bright. And within that radiant tigle, you can visualize anyone who is experiencing obstacles. And you imagine that they are protected in that light. So it could be oneself, one's friends, one's relative, one's lamas, and so forth. And so then if you are doing a long life recitation for your lama, you can change some of the syllables of the mantra. So instead of saying Om Tare Tu Tare Mama Ayo Pune Jana Pushtim Kuriye Soha, you would say Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Guru Nama Ayo Pune Jana Pushtim Kuriye Soha. So that you can change that and make it a recitation for the Guru. Guru Nama. And if you're reciting for someone who's close to you, a relative or a friend who is sick, you can just recite the normal mantra with this visualization. So also, if these visualizations are a little bit too complicated for you, you don't have to do all these visualizations. As you recite the mantra, you can just imagine that many replicas of white tara, like rainfall, they are falling from the sky and dissolving into yourself. And they can also be dissolving into anyone you are praying for, people close to you, friends, relatives, and so forth, as well as all beings. And you imagine that in this way, they are completely restoring degenerated lifespans, merits, wisdom, and so forth, as well as clearing away all illness. And Geshe said there's another visualization, and it's just we've run out of time, so we can't cover all of it, that involves the visualization of the wish-fulfilling wheel. And then sort of above this wheel, there's like Gurdi Dabochikwa.
Yeah,
oh yeah, yeah. It's like a sphere or two sides of a shell, which is like a kind of a tent, which nothing can penetrate at all, sitting in the midst of a rotating wish-fulfilling wheel, and one can do a visualization involving that. And if it doesn't make you dizzy, you can imagine this wheel spinning very, very quickly, to the point that no sort of obstacle or any interference or problem can enter that space at all. Oh yeah, and so this wheel, it has a hub and 8 spokes. Corazon. Oh yeah, and within it there are 3 kind of rims. And within the first one, okay, and so oh yeah, and so within the central hub of the wheel, you imagine that the part of the mantra Ayurpunye Jana Pushtum Kuriye Soha is visible. Om Mama Ayurpunye Jana Pushtum Kuriye Soha is in the central hub of the wheel where the tom is. Yeah. And then outside that central hub, the next layer beyond that first rim, there is there is Om Tare Tu Tare. Tare So. Sorry, Tare Tu Tare Ture So. Yeah. So that's, and each of those syllables is appearing on one of those spokes.
this one.
Mhm.
Ani ta tini ne yoko.
Yeah.
Yoko tala.
Yeah.
Tani kaka maru.
Yeah.
Mar
And
maru.
then
Yoko.
And then on the next one, rotating in the left direction are the Sanskrit vowels. So e, u, e, and so forth. Those of you who recite the prayers for blessing the speech in the morning will be familiar, but they're available.
This one. Ta yojo korachi tala kaka
And then on the outer one, yedro, yundro.
Yeko.
Yeah. And then going on the right side in that final rim are the consonants of the Sanskrit or Tibetan alphabet ka, 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 nga, cha, 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 nya.
Yeah.
And it is said also one can visualize on the very outer rim the mantra of dependent arising if one wishes. And as you recite the mantra, you want to visualize light rays emanating that are restoring any of the merits, life force, and enjoyments that may have degenerated. And so Geshe said, we are shortened for time, but there's many visualizations. Another one involving the Amatayus at his crown, emanating light rays and nectars, and that nectar overflowing and so forth. Many, many rich practices. Yeah. 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 And then there's another. Yeah. So there, Geshe said there's not a lot of time, but there's also a visualization where you can visualize light emanating from the thumb, and that kind of creates like a white sort of protective layer made of meteorite, like in the shape of an egg or a wheel, and that is the energy of pacifying. And then outside that is another layer of yellow light, which is increasing. Red for power, blue for wrathful, a green for all activities, and then a rusty colored red one at the very outer shell, which stabilizes all the attainments, but there's not time to do that whole visualization now. Marpo, Ngompo, Jangku, Senka. Senka. So Geshe says that this visualization is really nice. We just don't have a lot of time to go to detail within it, but you can visualize yourself, right, with this thumb emanating the lights, and you imagine that it makes this kind of enclosure, kind of like the top and bottom of a circle, like a tent. You don't imagine this is something kind of pressed in. You imagine it is something very vast, right? So you imagine that the first layer, which is the white representing pacifying outside that, and they layer on top of each other, the yellow representing increasing, the red for power, the blue for wrathful, the green to achieve all of the attainments, and the rust color to stabilize all of the attainments. And Geshe said, like, when you do this visualization, you imagine yourself inside these layers, it's like you get a really happy feeling. And between the layers are the upala flowers. So between the white and the yellow layer, it's filled with white upala flowers. Between the yellow and the red layer, it's filled with yellow upala flowers, and so forth.
This one, that thing nipa kardu yarsen shile, ani jibile, ani drop
Drapele.
Akasara, ani le ranjola one.
So this helps us to stabilize, right, our internal capacity for these different types of actions: pacifying, increasing, power, wrath, the stabilizing, the achievement of all of the attainments, including the stages of generation and completion stage, and finally the stabilization of all of those attainments.
보다 소소소더니 가를 가고요나요. 디디치는스이다. 아니 디디치는 콜로스이다. 단계되는 거지. 보다다들 그거 되는 엔티티스이다. 뭐하잖아. 가리 되고요나. 다 소소소.
And it's really up to you as you recite the mantra, whichever of these visualizations you're comfortable with, whether you want to visualize like the replicas dissolving into you, whether you want to focus on the visualization of the mantra wheels and so forth, or whether you want to meditate on the visualization of these layers that were just explained. And when you visualize the person in these protective tents or also in the protective squiggly line, the Tigle Geshe said that this is something that you can visualize your friends, family members, and so forth who are experiencing difficulty. It is definitely something that can bring them benefit. But these are not the main practices, right? The main practices are what? Divine pride and clear appearance. That is the very essence. Yeah. So Geshe said after this, right, we do the recitation of the mantra to purify mistakes, which is the Vajrasattva mantra, but it's the Vajrasattva of the lotus family. So instead of saying Om Vajrasattva Samaya, you say Om Padmasattva Samaya Manupalaya, and that's included in the handout. Yeah, and then Geshe said we come to the praise and then the dedication to be able to achieve the deathless state and so forth. Yeah. So Geshe said, thank you. That brings us to the end of at least our brief explanation of the White Tara practice. Yeah. And so Geshe said it probably won't be happening soon. But it is his intention to give a proper commentary on the extensive sadhana of White Tara. And then this will give you a much more kind of like slow, thorough exploration of all of those visualizations and auxiliary practice. So it's his intention to do that at some point in the future. And just Geshe said, just as a quick tip, right? If you're trying to build this practice at home, get yourself a nice image, like even just a picture, a really nice image of White Tara, and just try to spend a few moments every day looking at it. As you become more and more familiar with her aspect, you'll be able to bring forth, right, this perfect self-generation, which will help you to purify, right, grasping at ordinary appearance and so forth. And so Geshe said he thinks he's given you a lot of things to start to think about in terms of your visualization, in terms of the visualization of the mantra, in terms of the visualization of the wheel, and also in terms of the visualization of these protective tent-like layers. So there's a lot to start with here. All right, so thank you. We will end the session here and we will just go straight to the dedication today. Yeah, so there's no time for Q&A, so we'll go to the dedication. So page 28. Jiangzhu Semju Rinpoche Maje Panam Jeju Jewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondo Bewa Shu Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Panam Jeju Jewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondo Bewa Shu. Page 37, Jambel Pao Jita Jamba Kundu Zambo Teyon Dejen Deda Kungi Jesu Daro Je Gewa Deda
Dusun shepe gyawa damje ge ngawa gangla chodo ngaba de dagi kewe cawa digun kya zambo chochi rado ngawa.
뭐야, 네가 싫어봐? 아니 가제도 소소고 용조다 니들 왜지 마도 또 주셔서는 어느 소소를 더 왔다는 거 가지고 예 받게 도레스.
So thank you very much. We'll end here. And also when you have time, just try to look at the practice again and again, try out aspects of the practice again and again. And then, we can bring forth any questions in the future to discuss those.
다 저절로 년도를 샹도 세시가 돈은 야 저래 가시게 도와스. 대내를 또 명언에 다시 적어자는 소소 다시 해야 되레스. 너는 생각이 되어야 되레스.
So mainly the practice is structured with the causes of refuge and bodhicitta, then from within the sphere of emptiness, which acts as the cause for bringing forth the deity, and then the deity is the cause for accomplishing the welfare of both oneself and others.
So
Geshe said he feels like we did okay at getting the key points in there, and what you'll find is that these points also carry over to a lot of other Kriya Tantra deity practices as well. They'll all be similar.
So
Geshe hopes you can come to a good understanding of this, and he all wishes you great joy in your practice. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.